Hi, my name is Beth Zupec-Kania. I really wish I could be there with you in person today for this wonderful conference. The purpose of my presentation is to give you a brief overview of ketogenic metabolic therapy and to help you decide if this is right for you or for your loved one. First, I have no financial relationships with profitable businesses. The history of ketogenic diets is quite rich. The notion for this goes all the way back to the writings of Hippocrates and the Bible, where fasting was described to cure epilepsy. I'll fast forward to Dr. Russell Wilder, who proposed the ketogenic diet in 1921 for the treatment of epilepsy. And then let's jump to 1994, when the Charlie Foundation for Ketogenic Therapies was originated. Jim Abrams, Charlie's dad, is a Hollywood movie producer and writer, and he wrote a film called First Do No Harm, starring Meryl Streep. And this is a story about a little boy who, like Charlie, became seizure-free on ketogenic metabolic therapy. Now, we've just celebrated the 100-year anniversary of KMTs. And we still have a lot of work to do to get the word out about how impressive this therapy is for specific conditions. So I'm going to use the terms ketogenic metabolic therapy, or KMT for short, throughout my presentation. KMT for epilepsy in children has been very well researched. There are now consensus guidelines, which means these guidelines have been put together by many people around the world with lots of experience in using KMT. And within this paper is a table that describes the epilepsy syndromes and conditions for which this therapy has been consistently reported as more beneficial, greater than 70%, than the average responders with epilepsy. So this is an impressive list, and I'm going to read through it because I think some of you might be familiar with these diagnoses. Angelman syndrome, complex 1 mitochondrial disorders, Dravet syndrome, epilepsy with myoclonic atonic seizures or DUCE syndrome, glucose transporter deficiency, febrile infection-related epilepsy syndromes or FIRES, formula-fed children or infants, infantile spasms, Ohtahara syndrome, pyruvate dehydrogenase deficiency, superrefractory status epilepticus, and tuberous sclerosis complex. KMT is also beneficial for epilepsy in adults, and there's a separate paper just about this topic. By the way, both of these papers can be downloaded from the internet. They are open access articles. And then finally, there's a separate paper just on GLUT1. So this is a consensus guideline similar to the other papers. That is, a group of people from around the world sat down, put their heads together about advising physicians, other practitioners, nutritionists, and families about how to implement keto for this condition, where keto diet therapy really is the best treatment of all. There are other disorders where KMTs can help, and these are listed in alphabetical order. There's varying degrees of evidence on these conditions, but I'm going to highlight again, epilepsy has the most research behind it. GLUT1 deficiency syndrome and tuberous sclerosis have quite a bit of research. And so these other conditions include, I won't read through this, but autism, obesity, diabetes, certain cancers, traumatic brain injury. So lots of neurologic, endocrine, and certain cancers have been receiving clinical evidence of benefit. So we like to talk about a well-formulated KMT because there can be poorly formulated KMTs. A well-formulated KMT can result in better sleep, better energy levels, improved heart health, less bloating and gas, stronger nails, and a calmer mind. These are the positive benefits that I see with many of my patients who are using KMT for their specific condition. So what is a well-formulated KMT, you might ask? This slide shows you the foods that we use on all KMTs. The difference between the KMTs is the percentage of each of these. So first of all KMTs are highest in fat, in calories from fat. And we specify healthy fats such as extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, heavy cream, and butter. All KMTs are lowest in carbohydrate, and we like to choose the most nutritious carbohydrates because of this, for fiber and for vitamins and minerals. So most of the pictures here are of vegetables. I do have a few fruit represented. Avocados, for example, berries, olives, and then that's a green banana, not a plantain, but a green banana, which is much lower in sugar than the ripe yellow bananas. And then finally, all KMTs are adequate in protein, not low in protein. So fish, dairy, poultry, including eggs, and we can use a little bit of a vegan source of protein, such as hemp seeds. But by and large, we use animal proteins for getting our amino acids, which are essential to health. The variations in ketogenic metabolic therapies are the differences in the amount of fat, protein, and carbohydrates. So there's 4 main variations. First, the classic ketogenic diet, which was discovered 100 years ago. And the 4-to-1 classic is highest in fat. So that you can see on that plate, that dinner plate, the green area takes up the largest space, and that is 90% fat. And the protein and carbohydrate are quite minimized. In the second variation, we have the MCT oil keto diet, and this uses a special fat called MCT oil, which comes from coconut oil, and that allows us to use a lower percentage of fat and more protein and carbohydrate. The low glycemic index is another lower fat keto diet, quite liberal in protein. And then finally, modified Atkins, which is about the same fat, higher in protein, and very minimal in carbohydrate. So these diets are available for prescribing to you based on your specific needs, your age, your condition, and even your current diet, what you're doing currently. So when you go on to a KMT, and this is usually done very gradually, your carbohydrate intake is reduced, so you are producing less glucose, and your glucose level, which is shown by this blue line, begins to decline, and your ketone level, which is shown by the purple line, starts to increase. So we see the glucose come down and the ketones go up, and these can be measured in your blood by a little finger poke that doesn't hurt at all. And again, this is often started very slowly, especially if it's started up at home. We tend to go a little faster in the hospital with young children because we are watching them closely and we can catch any issues that might happen. So ketosis is a state of burning diet fat instead of glucose that results in blood ketone levels of greater than 0.5 millimoles. And once you start getting educated more deeply on this therapy, you get really familiar with the terms and the measurements. So there is a learning curve here, but it is actually fun. It's fun to see how you can monitor your own body and adjust the diet over time to make it more effective with the help of your medical professionals. There are quite a few keto recipes on the Charlie Foundation website, and you can try these out now. You're not going to get a prescribed diet, but you can try out the foods to see how different they are from what you're eating. For example, bread. We can make bread alternatives that are much lower in carbohydrate. And this little cookbook that we've translated into Spanish and other languages is a great place to go for alternatives to baked goods. So people usually miss bread and crackers and cake and cookies on a ketogenic diet, and this will give you alternative recipes. And most of these were created by families, and they're quite delicious. I love the cake. That's why I put the picture of the cake up, because it's actually quite tasty. It's a dark chocolate, not very sweet, and it tastes really good with some whipped cream on the top. And the whipped cream has no sugar added to it, of course. The Charlie Foundation also is a resource for providing information about centers that are experienced in prescribing ketogenic metabolic therapies. And it doesn't have every center in it. We try to keep it as up to date as possible. And the phone number or the website or email are listed for each of these regions around the world. Now, you can take steps to starting a KMT right now, today. And I would imagine that the food that is being provided at the conference today is in alignment with what I'm going to tell you about, eliminating highly processed foods. So what are highly processed foods? Foods that are packaged or foods that are prepared where you can't really identify what plant they came from by looking at them, right? So a potato is a real food, but French fries and potato chips are highly processed. Another term used for these is ultra processed. So you're going to eliminate these not only to get rid of the carbohydrate, but the seed oils that many of these contain, which are also not good for your body. So sweets, of course, even some athletic beverages, those you can eliminate right now. Second step, you need to get medical supervision. If you're going to actually do a ketogenic metabolic therapy, you need to find a physician who is experienced, who can do some laboratory studies and review your medications. There are certain medications that interact with keto metabolic therapy that need to be supervised. And then meeting with a nutritionist to prescribe a KMT that's ideal for you, your condition, your age, your needs, and to teach you how to monitor your glucose and ketones, and then personalize your diet so that it's enjoyable. We want you to be able to eat and enjoy your food, but also to get good results. So these are some of the personalized elements of a keto metabolic therapy. Your metabolic markers can be monitored with a home machine that's portable. You need to be educated on how much fluid to drink, and it's mainly water. And in your hot climate, this is really essential to know. You don't want to get dehydrated while you're in a state of ketosis. This is where you can run into trouble with kidney stones or constipation. So hydration is important. There needs to be supplements, and this is dependent on your condition, your age, what you are or not eating in your diet. And then for adults mostly, we like to try out possibly intermittent fasting, which just means eating between a certain period of time, such as 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. or even 6 p.m. And then finally, the timeline for your therapy. You might be on the therapy for a long period of time or a short period of time, or you might be on a restrictive version of the therapy for a short period of time and then transition over to a more liberal version of therapy. So these all need to be discussed with your ketogenic specialist. And then just a brief case study of 3 of my patients. This is a little girl who had idiopathic epilepsy, and she was on the classic ketogenic diet for 2.5 years. This woman had migraine headaches and depression, and I started her on a modified ketogenic ratio of 1:1 and transitioned her over to a very simple keto diet. She's been on the diet for over 5 years, and she plans to stay on it for a long time because she feels wonderful without headaches and without depression. And this young man on the right had a traumatic brain injury, and we started him on our liberal ketogenic diet and he was on it for only 3 months during his rehabilitation. And then he was transitioned off to a regular diet, but he follows a sugar-free diet still today. So thank you very much for your attention. I do want to actually finish with talking about Charlie. Charlie is now 30 years old. He's been seizure-free. He was only on keto for 5 years. He doesn't remember being on it. He's on a regular diet, and he's a very healthy man, has a job as a preschool teacher, and he loves to box and play the piano. Thank you for your attention. Have a wonderful day.